Have you ever wanted to discover what's missing in your life? Metaphysics is available to all and is part of your life even if you don't know it. Welcome to Metaphysics, a view through the veil with Barb Crowley. Together we'll explore the mysteries behind metaphysics and how to use it to have a deeper understanding and advantage in life. And now here's your host, Barb Crowley.
Hi, this is Barb Crowley, and welcome to Metaphysics, A View Through the Veil. Today we're talking to Baptiste de Pape. He is a lawyer, author, and filmmaker. He decided to investigate the incredible power of the heart and went on a quest around the world, interviewing many of the foremost thinkers of our time. This resulted in his first book, The Power of the Heart. And we are actually going to talk about his second book, although I'm going to bring the first book in. I want them both now. And his second book is Manifestation Perfected. He's talking to us from Belgium. So thanks so much for being on the show with me, Baptiste. I really appreciate your being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Barb. It's an honor to be on your show.
Thank you. Thank you. So you start off insulting humanity. We've become zombies. I don't disagree, but it was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I didn't mean it as an insult, but I think the biggest malady of our time is loss of soul. I mean, we've become so disconnected from our essence, our soul, the Holy Spirit, if you will. And I think that it's a big challenge for us right now. Yeah.
It is. We individually don't even know who we are anymore. I feel like, that
I agree.
and then of course moral fiber is the thing of the past, seems to be. That we don't, again, that goes with knowing who you are, though. To have a
Yeah,
morality, you have to know who you are for that. But
absolutely.
yeah. So, but why do you say we're on autopilot? Why do you think we've come here, come to this world, come to
Well,
this state of being? Yeah.
Why did we incarnate in a body? That's your
Hmm.
question, I
Well,
think,
not
right?
only that, but people came into bodies 30, 50 years ago, and they were not on autopilot and not zombies. So what happened to us? And then we'll get into how we are having a spiritual, experience in a body. But what happened to us
Uh,
as a
I,
human race?
I think it's radio and television, and then now, of course, internet and social media. Um, it's hypnotizing us away from our essence. It's very distractive. It's not um, leading us to who we really are, and we are souls.
Mm-hmm.
So we are in a way conditioned away. I mean, it's a form of social conditioning. We are conditioned out of who we really are. If you look at little children, they still know who they are. You can just feel
Right.
it. That's why we want to be in their presence. But through our linear, logical, rational education, it's all mind oriented, and then of course all the programming through the mainstream media. I think we are conditioned out of who we really are, and you can feel it, and you sense that there's a disconnection from your aliveness, and I think um, what we are talking about is a journey back to our aliveness, to our soul, to the fullness of life.
Is this what started you on your trek to go around the world to talk to people who were more heart centered?
Yeah, absolutely. So I used to be a lawyer in the city of Amsterdam, and I felt like something was off. I felt, disconnected from my aliveness, let's say. And I started I I started researching, how can I find my purpose in life? Because I felt I was not living my best life, I was not living my purpose. But the challenge was that I didn't know what my purpose was. So I started looking on the internet through Google. Um, how can you find your purpose in life? I just Googled that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I stumbled upon a video where Oprah Winfrey was in conversation with Eckhart Tolle,
Right.
the author of the Power of Now. And the video
Yeah.
started with Oprah saying, "I think there's nothing more important than finding your purpose in life." And that, of course, immediately resonated with me because I thought, okay, wow, this is exactly what I'm trying to figure out. And she said, "I think there's nothing more important than finding your purpose in life." And Eckhart, he replied, "I agree," he said, "but you can't get there through thinking."
Mm-hmm.
And that was for me a big eye opener. I was like, oh my God, I can't get there through thinking. That's all I know, thinking. And Eckhart, he continued and he said, if you want to find your purpose in life, then you can ask yourself, what do I want? But a more powerful question would be, what does life want from me?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, wow, that's an interesting question. Because I always ask, what do I want? What do I want? But I couldn't figure it out. And he said,
Right.
you should ask the bigger question, what does life want from me? And he said, if you want to find answers to that question, you have to look for stillness. And the best way to find stillness is to go into nature. So I decided, I have nothing to lose. I'm going to try this. And the next day I went into nature and I started to walk and just meditate on the question, what does life want from me?
Mm-hmm.
And for a long time, nothing happened. So I thought, okay, I'm going to send Eckhart Tolle an email that it doesn't work. But because I thought, okay, it must work, right? I mean,
What am
but
I
it start
missing? Yeah, that's where you're thinking, what am I missing? Yeah.
exactly. But I think after 1 hour or 2 hours of doing this, it started to rain really hard, and I just started to run in order to hide from the rain. And I
Mm-hmm.
found a few big trees, and I was standing under those trees.
Yeah.
So I forgot all about the question, but I felt all of a sudden that there was like a bone in my heart and it broke. I thought I was having a heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Oh my God, I'm gonna die." And this is probably the answer to the question. What does life want from me? It's over.
Yeah.
And I thought I was dying, but if I, could describe the feeling, it felt like there was a bone in my heart and it broke. And I even heard the noise of breaking something. And I thought I was dying, but in a way, I think my heart broke open.
Mm-hmm.
And when this was happening, all of a sudden, I was feeling all this. I was feeling a very powerful feeling of coming home, of grace, of love. It was very powerful. And
Yeah.
when that happened, like a download, the idea came to me, you have to make a film about the heart. And it was like falling in love. I was like, oh my God, oh, that's it. I have to make a film about the heart. It was so powerful. And it was sort of like falling in love. I was like, okay, yes, that's it, that's it. Because it felt like coming home and I felt so much love. This must
Mm-hmm.
be it. And so I was like in a state of, ecstasy and happiness and grace for, I think, 10 minutes. And then all of a sudden my mind started to kick in and my mind said, you're a lawyer, so you don't know anything about the heart. And my mind said, you
Or
have no background.
filmmaking? Did you know filmmaking?
Yeah, you have no background in film production, so this
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense. But at the same time, I thought, oh my God, this feeling is so strong, and this was exactly the feeling that I wanted to feel, right? The
Mm-hmm.
the juice of life, the aliveness, the fullness of life. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna just follow this feeling. And I remembered what Martin Luther King had said. He said, you don't have to see the whole staircase, just take the first step. And I said, I'm just gonna follow this energy and just
Yeah.
trust that it will take me to the right place, and that's how it started. And 5 years later, there was not only a film but also a book.
Mm-hmm.
And I so many great people opened their doors to me. I said, I'm gonna interview ambassadors of the heart. So I interviewed Paulo Coelho, the author of The Alchemist, Isabel Allende, the late Dr. Maya Angelou, Eckhart Tolle, Deepak
And you
Chopra.
got in to see all these people, and that's surprising right there.
Yeah, yeah. I traveled the
Yeah.
whole world and I interviewed them in their homes. So it was just
Right.
an
How
amazing
did
journey.
you manage to do that? Because so
I
many people contact them and very few get in there.
yeah, it's really hard to interview someone like Paulo Coelho, who sold like over 500 million books, I think. The
Right.
Alchemist is like, one of the best selling books of our time. It's of
Mm-hmm.
course really hard to, I mean, someone like Maya Angelou, it's like almost impossible.
Right. Right.
She passed away, I think, a
I
few
was going
months
to
back.
say it is impossible now unless you're
Yeah, yeah,
using a medium. Yeah.
yeah. And actually, when I interviewed her in her home in Winston Salem, Northern California, um, I think she passed away a few months later. So it was
Wow.
just amazing that I still had the chance to interview her.
Yeah.
No, I think they opened up their doors because. Um, I don't know. I mean, I, the first two people that I've interviewed were Jane Goodall and
Hmm.
Deepak Chopra, and I think it helps when you have two big names on board.
Oh,
Then it's
probably.
easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, then it's
Yeah.
easier to get all the other big names. Yeah. So I
Right.
think that's probably it. Yeah. But it
So
took me
what did
5 years to collect them all.
yeah.
Yeah.
And what did you learn?
Well, a lot. The first thing that I've learned is that they were all really courageous. And Maya Angelou said, if you want to live from the heart, then the first virtue that you have to develop is courage. And if you look at the word courage, in Latin, cor, it's derived from the word cor. Cor means heart. And
Mhm.
in France, we say cœur, which also means heart, and courage. So it's all connected. So courage is connected to the word heart. So
Mhm.
in order to live from the heart, you need to develop heart in a way. I think courage means that you develop your heart. And another thing that I've learned is every day you have to choose to live from the heart. It's a
What does that
conscious
mean,
choice.
like?
Yeah. So I'm using a metaphor now. So we are taught to live from the mind, right? I mean, we have a
Hmm.
linear, rational, logical,
Right.
let's say, education system. So how can you, what is the role of the heart and what's the role of the mind? And I always say, if you are on a boat on a river and you are the mind, then the mind can only see the next bend, the next turn on the river. So it has a very limited vision in a way.
Hmm.
But if you are the heart, you can see everything from a higher perspective. Let's say the bird's eye view. The heart can see the whole journey from source to sea. So it knows where you will end up eventually. The only problem is that we are not taught how to trust the heart. The heart is, let's say, the seat of the soul, where we have the connection with our soul. And we can only learn to trust it through experimenting with it. So now every time when we have to make a choice, we can look at it from a rational perspective and look at all the pros and all the cons,
Hmm.
and take that into consideration. But it's also important when we have to make a decision. Okay, what is our intuition telling us? What do I feel? How does it feel if I go left? How does it feel when I go right? Right.
Right.
So I think we can develop our connection with the heart through experimenting, and the more we experiment with it, the more we start to see, okay, this is a higher intelligence, this is a higher wisdom, this is a wisdom when you start to follow it, that there is power, there's purpose, there's meaning behind it. And then when we start to follow this energy, we start to meet certain people. We meet the right people at the right time. We start to experience synchronicity. Synchronicity is a word coined by Carl Jung, and it means that we immediately know that there is a bigger meaning behind it, that there's a power, there's a purpose behind it, and something is carrying us, something is showing us the way, something is guiding us. And So you start to really live from a much higher perspective. Yeah. So
Hmm.
that's what I think living from the heart is. So I mean, we all know the saying, follow your heart, and I
Right.
think following your heart is following your aliveness. Yeah.
Hmm. Did those people have a choice to follow their heart? Some people are so, um, like, isn't it Eckhart Tolle that suddenly thought, wait a minute, who's talking? I'm listening to my mind and somebody else is there who's talking. And that blew open his world. Isn't that him? that happens with.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So
so I
that
had
I
to take
kind
a
of
look.
feel like that was no choice because the minute that thought came in, he could never go back to
Yeah,
before
you're,
that thought.
yeah, you're absolutely right about it. So a little background. So he was doing his PhD at Cambridge University in England,
Mm-hmm.
and he was suicidal. And one night he said, "I cannot live with myself anymore." And when he had that thought, he thought, "Oh my God, there are two. There's an I and there's a myself."
Right.
And I think that's where he made that separation, where he said, "Okay,
Mm-hmm.
there's a part of me that's thinking, and there's a part of me that's observing the thinking." And
Right.
in reality, I am the observer. I'm not the thinker.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm the observer of the thoughts, but I am suffering because I I am identifying with the thoughts, and I think I am the thinker, but I'm not. I'm the observer of the thoughts. And when he was able to make that separation, he was free from his
Mm-hmm.
thoughts. And
Right.
um, to further answer your question, from all the people that I've interviewed, they all didn't want to live from the heart or connect with their soul or their higher self. They were all forced to do that through a crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you are in a deep crisis, then the linear, rational, logical education and knowledge can't help you anymore because the crisis is too big.
Right.
And the only way you can get out of the crisis is to tap into another intelligence, and you can't solve a problem from the consciousness in which it was created.
Mm-hmm.
So they all had to tap into another dimension, another consciousness. So they were all forced into their awakening.
Right.
They were all. I mean,
And
there's no
then once
exception.
there,
And
once there, no choice. Like he can
yeah,
never
yeah.
undo that knowledge.
You can't go back. You can't go
Yeah.
back. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, life forces us to grow spiritually. It's not a conscious choice actually. It's always a forced awakening, I think, you know.
Yeah. Now, I asked about like 50 years ago, we were more heart-centered as human beings. Well, now we're certainly more selfish.
Absolutely.
So how is it that we lost the heart then? Because I would think, well, if you're more selfish, you're more about I want. This is what I want. This is what I think, without thinking about other people as much. So, how did we, like you talk about TV and social media, but being as selfish as people are now, you'd think that their heart would be involved of I want this, I like this, I am this. And yet it's not at all involved. It's all mental.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And why that is, I think I already answered that question.
Just
I think
social media and TV kind
social
of
media,
thing.
social conditioning, social hypnosis.
Mm,
I think, it's also, I think, our education system and even our governments. I mean, they're not trying to lead us to our essence, our soul, to a higher awareness. It's all just low vibration fear.
right. Fear
Uh,
is a big one. Yeah.
yeah, and so but the thing is, if we want to change the world, then I mean, Mahatma Gandhi, he was right. Be the change you want to see in the world.
Mm-hmm.
We are having this conversation, and that's the best thing we can do. I mean, if we want to change the world, we first ourselves have to shift to that consciousness that we want to see. If you
Mm-hmm.
get the inside right, then the outside will fall into place. So we have the responsibility, and the good news is we also have the power. But we can only work on ourselves more, I think. Don't try to change other people. Work on yourself more, and I think that will have a ripple effect,
Right.
right? It's like with the Maharishi effect. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but I think if a few percentage, 1% of the people in a certain country is able to shift their consciousness, then automatically the other 99% will also feel that shift and start to transform.
I didn't know that actually. I didn't know that
Yeah, the
concept.
Maharishi effect,
Yeah.
you should look it up.
I
It's
will.
like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I like that.
So
You know
it's
why? There's hope with that. There's hope.
yeah, there's absolutely. I mean, there's this story about Eckhart Tolle. That one night he was at his home, and his a neighbor came, and she was really upset because she was going through a very difficult divorce.
Hmm.
And in the middle of the night, she wanted to talk to him because she knew he was a spiritual teacher. So she was looking for someone to talk to, and she was rambling. And oh, my ex husband, he did this and he did that and he did it, and she was just talking. And
Hmm.
I think after 30 minutes of talking, she said, "Oh, thank you so much. Oh, I feel much better now. I see the answers." And all he did was just staying in his presence, in what he calls the deeper eye. He didn't say a word.
Hmm.
He was just connected to source, or to the present moment. So I think that's the power of that energy. If once you are just connected and you stay in that energy, then I think that's the most powerful thing you can do. Be the change you want to see in the world. So if you look at my book Manifestation Perfected, it's
Hmm.
about three women. One is of course Oprah Winfrey. The other is J.K. Rowling from the Harry Potter series, and the third person is Anita Moorjani. I think her story is the most compelling and interesting.
The
She
most
has the classic
shocking.
near-death
It's truly
experience.
the most
Yeah,
shocking.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Have you heard of her story?
Hmm.
Have
Yes.
you read her book, Dying to Be Me? So
I read it a long time ago, and then in your book, you reminded me of her. Yeah.
yeah, so there's a few takeaways. One of the takeaways is that if you align with the energy of your soul,
Hmm.
which is infinite intelligence, unconditional love, but it's also a timeless dimension, then everything that truly belongs to you comes to you effortlessly.
Right.
And I think that's also how we can change the world. If we just stay connected to our soul and align with our soul, with the energy of our soul, then we create what Gary Zukav calls authentic power. Authentic power is when the personality starts to serve the energy of the soul. And I think that's how we can shift this. It's a consciousness war in a way, right?
Hmm.
That we're going through right now. Yeah.
Well,
And
you had a big breakthrough in reality when that it started to rain and you forgot to be looking for it or thinking about it. It
yeah,
came to you. But
yeah.
most people that doesn't happen to. Most people, how do most people get to the purpose of their soul?
Yeah, but it's like with all the I mean, there's so many near death experience stories. I mean, there's
Hmm.
Daniel Brinkley, the Raymond Moody, Elizabeth
Right.
Kubler-Ross,
But if you're
even
not going to do a
Alexander.
near-death situation, how does the
No,
average person get there?
what I'm trying to say is that just like with Eckhart Tolle or all the near-death experience people, you have to be ready. I mean, if the
Hmm.
pain is not big enough, you're not gonna transform.
Right.
And so if people are just comfortable and they want to watch television every night, and just in a way they're a little bit just comfortable, if it's not painful enough, there's no reason to transform
Right.
to that other awareness. So that's why I say, in most cases it's a forced awakening, but the people are they're suffering so much that they are looking for ways to get out of that suffering. And I mean, it's like with the Buddha. The Buddha, he was not looking for enlightenment at all. He was
Hmm.
looking for a way out of suffering.
Out of
And
pain. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And then I think um, if you don't want it bad enough, it's not going to happen. And even with the near death experience, of course, I mean, it's not a situation that you really want to experience, but once it happens, it can be, of course,
Hmm.
totally transforming. Yeah.
Yeah, those blow your circuits. They blow your circuit. And with Anita Morjani, sorry, um, in her near death, her realization is she had lived in fear her whole life and
Absolutely.
and lost her life to fear.
Yeah.
And the minute she realized, well, not the minute, but when she realized that she was living in fear,
Right.
and to let go of the fear, her body healed. And she came
Absolutely.
back from a death sentence. I mean,
Absolutely.
she was unconscious at that point and came back out of there, and the cancer was completely gone.
Within 48 hours, it was completely gone. Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
because she connected with the new, her true essence in a way.
Mm-hmm.
She connected with unconditional love and infinite intelligence, and she realized who she really was. And she had been, in her own words, a doormat her whole life.
Mm-hmm.
She tried to fit in because she was growing up in three different cultures. She grew up in Hong Kong, but her family was from India. And at school, she was at the British expat school, so she was surrounded with British children. So she was in British culture, Chinese culture, and Indian culture at the same time. So he was completely confused because she was trying to fit in all those three cultures at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so she had become a doormat and she had lived in fear her whole life. She was trying to please everyone. And she said, the reason why I got cancer, and she had lymphoma, which is cancer of the lymphatic system, it happened because the fear was creeping into her cells, and that had caused the cancer. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's what she shares in the book. And when she crossed over to the other dimension, she realized, oh my God, I have not been my true self, my authentic self, and I really be my authentic true self, my authentic self, and I have to treasure my own magnificence. And when I connect with this energy, everything that truly belongs to me really comes to me effortlessly. So she says, I'm the best example of that this is really true because once she connected with that soul energy, if you will, the
Right.
first manifestation, of course, is that her cancer was gone in 48 hours. She became a medical miracle, right? That's the
Mm-hmm.
first. I mean, we can agree that this is a great manifestation, right?
Right.
So, and the second thing that happened is, of course, that Wayne Dyer, the late Wayne Dyer, started to show interest in her story. So, his doctors called the doctors from the hospital in Hong Kong, and they said, oh, if this really happened, we would like to see the medical records.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted proof that this really happened, and they
Right.
confirmed that this really happened. And so Wayne started to encourage her to write her story in the book, Dying to Be Me, and he helped her to get a deal with Hay House Publishing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And of
And to
course, we
bring her
can,
story to the
yeah,
world. Yeah.
yeah. So we can say that this is also a second big manifestation, getting a publishing deal with Hay House and becoming friends with Wayne Dyer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, all I did was just being my true self. And all these things started to happen. So next thing that happens is that the book becomes a New York Times bestseller, Dying to Be
Yeah.
Me. And then so that's another manifestation. And then it becomes a global bestseller. It's
Mm-hmm.
a bestseller all over the world. And that's another manifestation. And then she starts to tour North America with Wayne Dyer, which is another manifestation. So
Right.
he said, once I started to connect with this energy, the manifestations just happened. Everything came to me
Mm-hmm.
instead of her chasing it.
Right.
So I think that's one of the things that I'm trying to communicate in this book is that, if you really want to manifest at the highest level, then you have to connect with who you really are, which is the soul. We have to connect with that energy
Mm-hmm.
and let the personality serve that energy. And then we create authentic power.
Mm-hmm. And that you saw both with Oprah and J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, yeah.
You
So with
said the
Oprah,
same thing.
Oprah also a very interesting story. I mean, we can agree that Anita Morjani really hit rock bottom. If you're dying, that's
Right,
the
right. She
lowest,
was
lowest.
leaving. She was leaving.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So with Oprah, it's another story. Oprah was really born into a rock bottom situation. She was born in Mississippi, the most racist state at the time.
Mm-hmm.
In her own words, she was as poor as you can be without having a roof over your head. In her
Mm-hmm.
own words, she was big, fat, and ugly, and nobody wanted her. Her parents were only together for one time, and that's how she was made.
Mm-hmm.
So very interesting. Her grandmother was a maid, and her um, mother was a maid. So her grandmother was raising her, and her grandmother told her when Oprah was little, "I hope you find yourself some nice white folks to work for." So expectation that she was raised
Yeah.
in was that she would become a maid too in Mississippi for some nice white folks. So
Mm-hmm.
how is it even possible that someone who is in that situation becomes one of the most influential women of her time, right? I mean,
Right.
it's like impossible, really. But Oprah, at a very young age, she was a member of the Baptist Church.
Mm-hmm.
She said, I mean, she started to pray to God as a child already. She said, God, I don't have a lot to live for. I don't have a lot to live for. So use me, use me. That's what she said.
Mm-hmm.
And again, so she was giving up her personal will to the higher will, God's will.
Right.
And I think that's a very good explanation for all the miracles that happened in her life.
Mm-hmm. Which
Yeah,
she immediately, well, not immediately. I mean, I think, went to Cincinnati or, got a
yeah,
TV gig, and then it just took
yeah,
off. Things happened.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you can really see in her life, if you look at where she started from, the most important moment where was really when she said, you know, God, use me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm yours. I don't have a lot to live for.
Right.
In a way, it's the same thing as what happened with Anita Morjani. I mean, Anita Morjani was already in, let's say, the hands of God, and then figured out, okay, this is who I really am. It's never our personal will. It's when we are able to let our personal will serve the energy of our soul, the higher self. That's
Mm-hmm.
when the shift comes. And so don't ask what do I want, but ask, what does the soul want from me? What does God want from me? What does the higher self want? Right? And
Right.
if you start to serve that energy, then the miracles start to take place. I'm also an example of that. So let's go to J.K. Rowling.
Mm-hmm.
J.K. Rowling is from England. She went to university. She married a Portuguese journalist. She moved to Portugal, and the marriage was short lived. It was a disaster, but she has a little girl in that marriage. They divorce, and she wants to go back to England, but it's very expensive to live in London, so she decides to go live in Edinburgh, Scotland, where her sister lives.
Mm-hmm.
And she can't find a job. She feels that her life is a total failure. She's a single mom with a young baby girl, and she feels really like she hit rock bottom. But
Right.
hitting rock bottom was really a stripping away of the inessential. And she once did a Harvard commencement speech where she speaks about the power of failure. We don't talk about it enough because she said failure, hitting rock bottom, was the best thing that ever happened to me
Mm-hmm.
because it stripped away everything that I was not.
Yeah.
It stripped away the inessential. And in this time where she's so depressed, where she feels that her life is a total failure, she says, I might as well do what I always wanted to do when I was a kid, start writing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one day she's in a train from Manchester to London, and she gets the download, just like I had the download to do the Power of the Heart film. She gets
Right.
the download, okay, wizard boy that doesn't know he's a wizard goes to wizarding school,
Mm-hmm.
and she feels so much excitement and grace and love, and she says, "Oh my God, this is the best idea ever," because of the aliveness that she feels, and she sees the whole Harry Potter universe. Just it comes to her immediately, and she can't stop writing, and she just it really um, pulled her into another world.
Mm-hmm.
The whole Harry Potter universe, and she has been in that world, of course, for years and years and years after that download. But she started to follow that aliveness, and it could only happen because she was in a situation where she had no job, where she was depressed, and where she was open to get this download, and where she was open to say, I'm at such a low point in my life, I might as well do what I always wanted to do. I've got nothing left to lose.
Right. Right. And you
So
were
we've got,
kind of, I'm
yeah,
sorry, go
please.
ahead.
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
No, I was just going to talk about you, that you were kind of there too, that
Yeah.
you were desperate enough to go out to the woods and say, I need my purpose, I need my purpose. Even though you had not failed at what you were doing in life, You were in a desperate moment.
Yeah, it was like, is this going to be my life? I'm with a big international law firm. Okay, my aim is going to be, just to become partner, and I'm going to work 7 days per week to get
Right.
there. And I was like, I don't want this to be my life. There must be something else, but I didn't know what it could be.
Hmm.
You know,
What about the average person that, they're not desperate, they're not happy? The majority of people, like you said, zombies, we're not anywhere to put us, we're not broken enough to receive a download,
yeah,
basically. What about these people? What about the average person? That is the average person.
yeah. Well, I think I am the average person, but
Well, you
um,
hit a desperation. I know a lot of people that will go through their lives. They're not unhappy enough to do anything about it, but they're not happy. They're not desperate. They don't hit that point of desperation.
yeah, I think I agree with you. I think a few things that we can do is, what brings us, what makes us feel alive?
Mm-hmm.
When do we really feel connected to our aliveness? Because I think living from the heart and connecting with the soul is about following your aliveness. And, a fish knows that its element is to swim, right? And a
Mm-hmm.
bird knows that its element is to fly. But when we are born, we don't get the manual of what our true element is.
Right.
And I think
Right.
we all have a specific soul imprint, soul blueprint, but our linear rational education cannot help us to connect with that. And I think we can only connect with it when we open our hearts and we connect with what Eckhart Tolle calls the fullness of life,
Mm-hmm.
because our soul is not passive. Our soul has intentions, and
Yeah.
we can only identify the intentions when we start to connect with its energy. So for everyone, it can be different. So when I interviewed Jane Goodall, she says I connect with my soul when I'm in nature and when I'm working with animals. And Paulo Coelho and Isabel Allende said we connect with the soul when we are writing. And Maya Angelou said I connect with the soul when I'm singing or when I'm praying. And Deepak Chopra said I connect with the soul when I'm meditating. And Eckhart Tolle said I connect with the soul when I'm in the present moment. So there's many ways to get there, and we have to figure out what brings us into a state of flow, what makes us come alive. When do we really feel that we are connected with something bigger than our body? When do we feel really high vibration? When are we excited? When do we feel this state of grace?
Mm-hmm.
And we all recognize those feelings, but those feelings, they can really point us towards what our soul wants.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really key, right? So again, we have to feel our way there. And when do we lose track of time? Because the soul is a timeless dimension. When we are engaged in something and we love it so much, and oh my God, we forgot to have lunch or dinner, or we totally
Right.
forgot our sense of time. I think that's really a good guideline there, right?
Where
And
we
when do we
lose
experience?
ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah, and when do we experience synchronicities? I mean, I interviewed Roland McGrady from the Harvard Institute in California, and he said that synchronicities are happening all the time, but when we are not in heart coherence, when we're not experiencing love and gratitude in our heart, so when we're not connected to our intuition, we don't see them. But they're happening all the time. So life is guiding us all the time, but most of the time when we're not connected to our intuition, we don't see the guidance.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Can we do it from just looking at what our fear is? If we have nothing that is like where do I lose myself or what makes me the happiest? Can we do it from the fear side? What am I most afraid of? Does that work that way?
That's a good question. Um, I always say feel the fear and do it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
but I think fear is not a good compass, right? I think love should be the compass. Uh,
Right.
you
The
know,
enjoyment, the
yeah,
loss of yourself into something.
yeah. When do you feel the state of grace? When do you feel the guidance of so our soul is always focused on reverence for life, cooperation, equilibrium, uh, unity consciousness, love, gratitude. When you experience those things, I think that is a higher intelligence, and fear is a lower intelligence,
Hmm.
if you would. Yeah,
Lower vibration, yeah.
yeah.
And can we look at our lives and look at self-sabotage? If we're sabotage, there's self-sabotage, or if we're stuck, is that a red flag to say, wait a minute, this isn't working. I'm not in a flow. Something isn't working here.
Um, yeah. When we are in a state where we are stuck, I think that's okay. We can't be in the flow of life all the time. We can't be connected with our
Hmm.
soul all the time. But when we experience a state where we're stuck, I think the first step is to realize that we're stuck. And I think then we can bring awareness to that situation and start to shift it, right?
Hmm.
Once we are aware of the fact that we're stuck, I think we are becoming more aware, and then we can shift it energetically. I think that's the first thing. Okay, how am I going to shift to a higher vibration? How can I connect with my heart again and with my soul? And I think one of the things you can do is, of course, heart coherence meditation. You can find them on the website of HeartMath. Cultivate love and gratitude in your heart. What are you grateful for? Go into nature, have a walk, do something you love to do, and that will bring you back into the vortex of your soul.
Hmm. But do something you love to do. Again,
Yeah,
any creativity that you can lose yourself into,
yeah, yeah,
seems to open you up.
yeah.
You talk about remote viewing, and where does that play in?
How did you hear about that?
How did I hear? It's in your book, it's in your notes. Well, I'm a psychic. No, the
It's
remote
interesting
viewing.
because I don't think it's in my book, but I do think it's
Remote viewing has
interesting.
shown that the boundaries we see are mere illusions, but you're using remote viewing.
Yeah. I've been into the remote viewing world
So
for
tell
20
me about
years.
it. Yeah.
Oh, and nice that you bring that up. So yeah, I've been into remote viewing for what 23 years now, and
Hmm.
really changed my life. So yeah, remote viewing it started, I think, during the Cold War, right? I mean, the Americans they noticed that they were losing a lot of information to the Russians, and they didn't know how.
Yeah.
And they figured out, I think, in the Pentagon that the Russians were investing millions in the education of psychic spies, and
Hmm.
so they started their own unit, and it started, I think, with Russell Tark and Hal Puthoff and Ingo Swann. They are considered to be the fathers of remote viewing.
Yeah.
I think also Stephen Schwartz is one of the fathers of remote
Hmm.
viewing. And they basically created a protocol. Remote viewing is a protocol,
Right.
and I think everyone can learn it. But yeah, some people are more gifted than others.
Hmm.
Um, and I learned the protocol as well, and yeah, I started to work with other remote viewers, and it's amazing because remote viewing is really confirming that there is a dimension where there is no that we can connect with, and it's a timeless dimension. So Edgar Casey, some people consider him the first remote viewer, the sleeping
Right.
prophet. He connected with what he called the Akashic records,
Hmm.
and the Akashic record is basically a library where all the information ever is available. And
Yeah.
I think that's pretty close to what we can call the field. So the field is timeless, and all the information is there. So of
Hmm.
course, if you start to look at all the near-death experiences and you look at what remote viewing is, then you start to see, oh my God, so a part of us is connected with a dimension where there is no time, and we can tap into that. At the same time, when we are in the body, we experience time. So in a way, the body is a time machine, and not a time machine where we time travel, but a time machine where we are able to experience time. Once we disconnect from our body, then we don't experience time. So time does not exist in a way, but it does exist when we are in the body because we experience time. Do you understand?
Hmm.
So I think it's really interesting um, that we are able to connect with a dimension where all information is available and where time does not exist, and then bring it to the dimension in our body where time does exist and actually do something useful with it.
Hmm. And where do you go remote viewing when you sit down to do it? Do you go through different things? Your remote viewing, where do you go
Yeah,
with it?
my preference is to to look at scenarios into the future. I
Hmm.
like to so for instance, back in 2016, I was in Portland. I was teaching remote viewing to 100 students, and so if you remote view, you have to be blind about the target. I don't know if you know anything about the
I know
protocol
a
of
little
remote.
bit about it, but
Yeah,
for my audience, you probably should go through it
yeah,
again.
yeah. So if you're a beginner, especially, you don't want to know anything about the target. The
Hmm.
less you know, the better. So it's also with a good medium. One of my favorite mediums, I don't know if you've ever heard of her. She passed away, unfortunately, but I interviewed her a few times, was Michelle Whitedelf. I don't know if you've ever heard
I don't
of
know.
her.
No, I
Yeah,
don't know.
she was amazing. She was very well known, I think, in the United States.
Hmm.
And she was in a show, America's Number One Psychic or something. I don't know. But
Yeah.
anyway, she was amazing. Um, and so the less you know, the better. If you are a medium, you don't want to know anything about your client, right?
Hmm.
You just tap into the field and get the information, right?
Right.
And with remote viewing, it's the same thing. So how do we solve the problem that we can remote view some things without knowing what we're doing? So you need a moderator that creates targets,
Hmm.
and they create target codes. So all you get
Right.
is a target code. It's almost like a license plate. It doesn't make any sense, but it's useful.
It's an
Uh,
identifier kind of
yeah,
thing.
it's an identifier and helps you
Yeah.
with the bookkeeping and the administration of what you're remote viewing. So I gave my students a target code, but the underlying question was who is going to be the next president in the United States. So mind you, this is February 2016, right?
Hmm.
And I'm in Portland, Oregon, and I have like 100 remote viewers, new students. I think like 90% are Americans, but there's like 10% Canadians.
Hmm.
And so they're doing the session. I taught them the protocol. They're doing the session, and during the session, so the underlying question was again, who's going to be the next president in the United States in November 2016, but we're still in February 2016, so eight,
Right.
9 months before the elections. So during the session, a woman from Kelowna, British Columbia, she screams out, "Oh my God, I see Donald Trump!" And I said, "Okay, please give me all your sessions because they have to do their sessions on paper, and I will come back after the lunch break, and then we'll see what the majority report is saying." So in remote viewing, we like to work with majority reports, right? If you've
Hmm.
100 people, majority is saying. So after the lunch break, I come back and I say, "Okay, I have a very clear majority report here that one guy named Donald Trump is going to be the next president of the United States." And the,
Yeah.
the people there, the Americans, I mean, Portland is really more democratic, I think.
Oh, it is very democratic,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. So
Yeah.
those people became angry with me. They said, "Oh, this is proof that remote viewing doesn't work because this clown is never going to be the next president of the
Hmm.
United States."
Right.
And I said, "Okay, you know, I'm a European. I don't care whether it's a
Yeah, really.
Republican or Democratic. I mean, I'm cool with everything. But I said, I mean, we have a clear majority report here that this is going to happen, and I'm going to now look what the online bookmakers are giving in terms of quotation for this. And at that
Mhm.
point, Donald Trump was still one of the 16 Republican candidates. So the bookmakers
Yeah.
were giving 100 to 1 at that point,
Hmm.
for him to become president of the United States. So every month with other remote viewers, I started to remote view again who's going to be the next president in on November 6th, and it was going to be Donald Trump every month. Every month we saw Donald Trump,
Wow.
and we saw it in February, in March, in April, and so on until October.
Hmm.
And so there was no other reality than Donald Trump becoming the next president. And it was really interesting because I was living in the US at the time, so I was following the news, and
Right.
everyone said, all the pollsters said that Hillary was going to win.
Hmm.
But there was one guy, and his name was Michael Moore. I don't know if you've heard of
Yeah,
it.
I know him. Yeah. Well, I know of
So
him. Yeah. From
yeah,
news, I know.
he made the film Fahrenheit 9/11, and he made the
Hmm.
film Bowling for Columbine. But in that same time, he was going to the Rust Belt and interviewing, a lot of people in the Rust Belt for his documentary called Trump Land.
Hmm.
Uh, and when he was just in the bus, in the van driving through the Rust Belt, and just having conversations with those people, living with them, hanging out with them. And he drove back to New York, and he went onto a big mainstream television station, and he said, "Listen, I'm a Bernie Sanders supporter. I'm a socialist,
Hmm.
but I have got terrible news, but Donald Trump is going to be the next president of the United States. I've interviewed so many people in the Rust Belt, and everyone is going to vote for Donald Trump. And they're not telling the pollsters because they know it's politically incorrect to vote for Trump,
Hmm.
right? So they're lying to you when you're polling them."
Yeah.
And this is not my personal preference, he said, but it's very clear that Donald Trump is going to be the next president. And I was like, oh my God, there's one person that also sees what I'm seeing in the remote
Yeah.
viewing.
Hmm.
And I was sharing this with, the people that I knew. And unfortunately for me at the time, all my friends that I had in the United States were Democrats. So they were not happy with what I
Right.
was saying.
Right.
They thought that this was my personal preference. And again, I was neutral because I didn't care who was going to be president
Hmm.
of the United States. So they became angry with me. But of course, the remote viewing was right.
Yeah. But here's the one thing though with Michael Moore, he interviewed everybody who said they were going to vote for
Yeah.
Trump, and he did become president, but Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. So the majority of the United States voted for Hillary Clinton. And then the Electoral College, it fell, the way things were pieced out, it fell to Donald Trump. But he didn't win the majority. So, where I understand your remote viewing, that makes more sense. Who's going to be president? Where Michael
Yes.
Moore is who's everybody voting for. Well,
Yeah,
they
but
were voting for Hillary Clinton, but Donald Trump became president.
I do think much more people voted for Donald Trump than the Democrats expected, right?
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
without a doubt.
yeah,
Without a doubt. Yeah.
yeah. So I think if you look the night before the election, all the big bookmakers, the online bookmakers in Europe, they paid
Mm-hmm.
out everyone who voted for Hillary. They were so convinced that Hillary was going to be the next president of the United States.
Right.
Everyone was convinced Hillary was going to be
Right. Right.
president. When Trump was elected, it was a big shock all over the world. I can tell you that.
I'll tell you, from what I saw, and I grew up in New York when he was around New York a lot, Donald Trump was most shocked of anybody.
Yeah, yeah,
He
yeah.
was there for brand awareness. He
Yes,
was not
yes.
there to be president. So yeah, he was most shocked. But it was Hillary Clinton did take the popular vote. And if
Yeah,
you know the Electoral College, it is starting to fall to the lesser vote, the
a-
minority vote, but
absolutely.
yeah, and that's one thing I learned. I'm sure in remote viewing, too, it's how you ask the question. Not who's gonna win the vote. That's not gonna
No.
be the right question.
The
It's
question
who's gonna
was
be president of the United States. Yeah,
exactly. I wanted to see the picture of the next president of the United States at the
right,
time.
right.
Yeah, and I do think. I mean, he's president now again. I mean, the guy is 78. I mean, whether you like him or not, I think he's a force of nature. It's I don't know how he does it. I mean,
Nobody
78.
knows, including him. He has no
Yeah,
idea.
yeah, no idea.
He doesn't know how this is happening himself. But
Yeah,
it is like there's so much, we're in such a world change that,
yeah,
and a vibrational change. And I think
absolutely.
that he's a part of that,
Yeah,
good or bad. And it is almost like the old versus the new. And the
yeah,
new hasn't quite squeaked out yet. So,
yes.
and the old is desperately hanging on, and majority of people are confused in the middle.
Yeah, it
Seems
is. I
like,
mean, it's all about shifting to who we really are.
mm,
In a way, it's this whole fear-based society we live in. It's an illusion.
right. But then
But
again, that's what's selling. If you listen to the news or TV, it's all fear, 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 horrible, horrible. There are
yeah,
very few, fix-its and hope for the future. It's all, fear, 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 you know.
at the same time, you just turn off the television, close your laptop, and go outside and look at the trees.
Right.
Everything is good. Everything is
Hmm.
good. I mean,
Everything's fine then. Yeah.
this whole universe can do without humanity. It's a loving
That's the
universe.
other thing we're afraid of. It can do without us.
Yeah, yeah. I
I
mean,
know.
it's a loving universe. I mean, paranoia. You know what paranoia means.
Yeah.
Paranoia means that you think that everything is rigged in your favor, right?
Mm.
And I think you know. I don't want to live on that frequency.
Right. Right.
I can be happy every day. I can be grateful every day.
Hmm.
I can be loving every day. I can be in a high vibration every day, as long as I work on myself. And but
And
other
this
people,
might be the reverse, where, people are living in fear every day
yeah,
from the TV, from what's being dredged up, really.
yeah,
Well, it might put people to the extreme. Like I said, you were desperate when you went out to find your purpose in nature, or when some of the people that you talk about, hit their what broke them apart really to open them up for the download. Maybe that's where we're headed. That fear is so intense, will become so intense that people will just open and hopefully get the download. Maybe.
yeah. Yes, I do think. Um, I mean, there's why do we choose to incarnate in a body in this time, to
Hmm.
have this experience in a way. And I think we're all having this experience because, our essence is, again, if you look at the near death experiences,
Right.
unconditional love, infinite intelligence.
Hmm.
We are timeless. Our true dimension is uh, timeless. So,
Right.
why would we choose to be in a body? Because when you are formless, um, there's a lot of experiences you actually cannot have, right?
Hmm.
You don't know how it is to touch. You don't know how it is to kiss. You don't know how it is to taste food.
I don't think you really
Um,
know emotion on the other
yeah,
side. The
yeah,
intensity of emotion, I think, is here.
yeah.
On the earth plane, it's not, on the other side. Once you leave a body, like fear, we talk about fear. There's no fear in spirit.
There's no duality,
No,
and so there's a lot of experiences you cannot have.
right.
So I think we
I didn't
choose.
think of it that way, but that is true. You
Yeah.
know.
So there's a cardiologist that I know, and he did a lot of interviews with people who had the near death experience, and he also said that once you crossed over, you miss being able to give someone a hug. To
Hmm.
hug your loved ones. to feel
Right.
their skin. So we miss that because we cannot have that experience once we crossed over. So how is it to be infinite intelligence and unconditional love and just be energy and be formless, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's probably who we truly are.
Right.
Um,
Sounds
I think
boring, doesn't it?
no, if you look at Anita Manjani's story, she says it was like being in the sea of love. She didn't want to come back, obviously, because her body was full of cancer.
Right.
And they said, no, no, you have to go back because you have to share with the world who we really are.
Mm-hmm.
You have to tell them that we have to treasure our magnificence. And she didn't want to go back. Do you know why she went back? Because she said, I'm not going to fulfill this mission. I'm not going back to this sick body. But because she was infinite intelligence and because the dimension she was in had no time, there was no time there,
Mm-hmm.
she could, look and see that if she would come back in the body within 48 hours, she would be healed from the cancer. And that's the only
Yeah.
reason why she came back. She didn't care about her mission really. She just didn't want to feel the pain again. And again, if you come into the body, she talks about this. It feels like you're this big formless energy, and all of a sudden you're forced into a little box, right? When you
Right.
come into
Right.
the body. And it's a more dense vibration actually to
Mm-hmm.
to go into the body. So you see it
And
also
we
with
cut
babies.
off all our knowledge, you know?
Exactly. And you see it also with babies when they're born. A lot of them cry. Why are they crying? Because they were like in this sea of love, and all of a sudden they're in this tiny body, and they're like, it's much
Mm-hmm.
too small for me, right?
Right.
So I think being born is much harder than dying in that way,
Hmm.
because when we die, we go back to source.
Right.
So
I
yeah, in
never
a
thought
way,
of that. That's that's probably true.
yeah. So in a way,
This body, and they say too, the stretching is kind of experiencing your body. The babies, stretching and all of that is experiencing your body.
absolutely, they're like, oh my God, I'm in a body. What's this?
Right,
Right?
right.
And so the good news is, if it's not the end, um, in the end, it's all going to be good. The worst
Hmm.
thing that can happen is you're going to die, and the good news is we're all going to die, and then we're
Right.
back, into source energy. So, it's we're now in, you can call this a matrix or a simulation, and they're throwing all this fear on us, but it's not who we are. So just focus on who you are, connect with the energy of your soul, and everything will be okay. Everything,
That's
it's
that's the big thing though is connecting to your soul.
yeah,
Um, so you say 6 steps, practical blueprint to transform your life is, of course, connecting to your soul, and
absolutely.
but also forgiveness is one of them.
Yeah, I mean, forgiveness is another word for freedom, right? I mean, as long as you are holding a grudge against someone, it's blocking you from connecting with who you really are, because you can't connect with your soul if you're angry. And yeah, forgiveness is very, very powerful. And Maya
Hmm.
Angelou said, forgiveness is so important and powerful that it makes me weep every time I think about it.
Right.
Uh, but forgiveness is also realizing who you really are. If you are infinite intelligence, if you are uh, God, if you're source energy, then there's nothing to forgive in the first place.
Hmm. Now I'm back to remote viewing real quick here. Um, so you remote view your intentions. Do I have that wrong? Because that's kind of remote viewing is actually observing, but how do you
Yeah.
put your intentions out there?
Oh, that's so. Every time I do a session, I first ask if I call it Holy Spirit. I
Hmm.
was raised Catholic here in
Me
Europe.
too. So I got Holy Spirit.
Yeah,
I understand the Holy Spirit.
for me, when I say Holy Spirit, that really resonates with me energetically,
Hmm.
and I have a very strong connection with the Holy Spirit. I always ask permission
Hmm.
before I do a session. I say, if this is not what you want, I'm not gonna do it. If you want to cooperate, if you think this is a good idea, then I'm gonna do this session on this particular subject, right? Because you can
Right.
remote view anything. And I noticed that once I started to ask permission to the Holy Spirit and say, okay, is this a good idea to
Mm-hmm.
do this? It really helped me to get better sessions.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes when you start to remote view from your personality or your ego, then it's
Right.
coming maybe greed. I mean, you can make money with remote viewing, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they use it for financial markets or for sports betting or whatever. I used it to make money on Donald Trump back in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
But it was not my intention to make money. I was just curious who was going to be the next president. And then I figured out, oh my God, this is a big surprise.
Financial opportunity.
Get 100x on my money. It's not bad. So
Right.
but it actually it was just happening from curiosity. And I
Mm-hmm.
noticed that when I do things from curiosity,
Yeah.
they always pan out. They always, it always works out. But when I do it from greed, no,
Well, one
the-
is neutral. Isn't that what
yeah,
it is? One is neutral and the other is
yeah, yeah.
projection
But
almost. Yeah.
if you look at the film The Secret, right? You must have seen
Mm-hmm.
the film or read the book.
Right.
It's all about the law of attraction. But
Right.
they don't ask the question, if you have an intention, where is it coming from? Is the intention coming from your personality or
Mm-hmm.
from your higher self? And
Yeah.
what I figured out in my life is that, all my big manifestations, it was never coming from my personality. It was always coming from my higher self.
Mm-hmm.
The higher self, soul, is not passive. It has intentions. And if we start to, you know, align with our soul and start to fulfill the intentions of the soul, then we work from a much higher plane, right?
Right.
Because then you start to feel, okay, the universe is supporting this. This is the higher will. Now I have the synchronicities. Now I feel that something bigger is guiding me. There's power, there's purpose, there's meaning behind this. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a much more fulfilling way of manifesting than just
Right.
from my own poor, meager personality that is focused on greed most of the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Or
I think it's
want, where you say greed, but it might just be that you want things to turn out a certain way.
yeah,
And that's where I talk about neutrality or projection.
yeah.
It's, because you want this for somebody or you want something.
Still here?
Yeah, I
Hello.
lost you for a minute there. We've had
Let,
some blips in communicate in
can you see me?
internet through. Yeah, I
Can you
can
see me?
see you. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Okay, yeah, I can see myself too. Um, anyway, so
Yeah,
I think
through neutrality and projection,
yeah. So
as
I
being
think
different.
yeah. So I don't think. I mean, we're talking about remote viewing now, obviously, but for remote
Or
viewing, it's
even intentions.
yeah,
Even
yeah.
intentions.
I think every time you have to ask, is this also aligned with what my soul or in this case my spirit
Hmm.
wants? And sometimes I get a no, and then
Right.
I said, okay, this is not what I should do right now.
Hmm.
And there is this little play between our personality and our spirit, and I think our personality also always should check with, okay, is my spirit giving permission?
Hmm.
And I think that's a really good way to live. Yeah.
Yeah. What happens when you die and you haven't lived a life that connected to your soul? Have you ever looked at that?
Well, I think there's no real damage there. I think then,
It's
you
just
just
like
connect.
a waste of time.
No, it's not your waste of time. It's like, okay, you decided to incarnate in this body. I think it was your job to, live from your true essence, from who you really are, your soul. But it didn't work out this time. Okay, next time. I mean, but
Hmm.
if you look at what Anita Morjani is saying, when she was in that timeless dimension, she realized, oh my God, reincarnation actually doesn't exist, she said. because time doesn't exist. So it's all happening at once. There is no such thing as reincarnation. It's all parallel lives.
Right.
So if it's all parallel lives, then probably in one of those parallel lives, you're doing the right job, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Can those
yeah.
parallel lives, do you think, bleed into each other?
What do you mean by that?
Like, let's say in another parallel life, I'm living my soul journey, but in this parallel life, I'm not. Can that
Exactly.
success, let's say I've lived in my soul journey, bleed into this life somehow, or my lack of bleed into that life?
Yeah, so you're basically saying that what you're doing in one life is influencing what's happening in
Yeah,
another life. That's what you're
yeah.
saying. Yeah,
I guess
it
so. I'm calling
probably,
it a bleed
yeah.
in, yeah.
Yeah, because now we're talking about non-locality. All points in time and space are connected, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all those lives are connected. It's mind-blowing, actually. I mean, we can't comprehend it with our mind in the first place, but
Right. Right.
yes, it must be true. I mean, if you look at the work of Masaru Emoto, I don't know if you've heard of him.
Don't know. No.
So he was making pictures of water, and he was putting intent on the water, right?
Oh, I've
So
seen that. Yeah.
so when he was putting a loving intent, the water was really becoming really beautiful and symmetric. And when it was a negative intent, the water really was asymmetric.
Mm-hmm.
So it crystallized in a completely different way because he was freezing the water, and then you obviously could see the symmetry. So it seems that love is creating harmony and symmetry and equilibrium,
Right.
and gratitude is doing that. And so it's a really powerful force, love and gratitude. And I think that the opposite of love, which is fear,
Mm-hmm.
is creating, more scrambled energy,
Right.
fragmented
Chaos. Yeah.
chaos. Yeah. So that's it's so beautiful that it's this way because it shows us how powerful we are.
Mm-hmm. It
Yeah.
does. So if let's say I'm having a loving life and then there's chaos, could it have come in from a parallel life where I'm not following my
Yeah,
purpose?
or through your television, but one of yeah.
Yeah. If not the parallel life, the TV. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is the truth. That is the
Yeah.
truth. What are you looking at on remote viewing when you sit down to remote view now? What are you looking at most of the time? What are you most curious about now?
Yeah, right now, to be honest, I have a big group of remote viewers here in Europe now. We're
Mm-hmm.
a few hundred. And yes, we like to look at the financial markets.
Right.
It's really interesting right now because the markets are, collapsing a little bit.
Yeah.
And we like to look at politics. Um, yeah, and what's happening in the world. Is there going to be a peace treaty for Ukraine?
Mm-hmm.
Ukraine, sorry, Ukraine.
Is it going to be a war? I got this
Yeah, is there
fear of
going to be a
war. Yeah.
war? Is Donald Trump getting the Nobel Peace Prize? And I'm saying no. That there's a big chance
I'm
that
sorry,
Donald
you
Trump will get
broke
the
up
Nobel.
there. What are you saying about Donald Trump getting the Nobel Peace Prize?
He's probably going to get it for ending the war in Ukraine. So people will say, "Oh my God, Donald Trump is going to get the Nobel Peace Prize." Yes, I think he will get that. Yeah, well, um, I hope they don't kill Donald Trump um, because a Trump assassination would not be good for the world, I think, and not
He
good for the
might be
United States.
Teflon. I mean, they've tried.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, so I hope that doesn't happen.
Hmm.
But there are remote viewers who are seeing that timeline that he gets assassinated, and I don't think it's good for the world. It would create a lot of social unrest.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't think there's going to be a war. I do think that Trump will end the war in Ukraine, and then maybe I don't know if it's Iraq or Iran. We will start a war there then after that.
Probably Iran, I would think.
Iran,
But
yeah. So
maybe, yeah.
Yeah, it's probably Iran. So I think if we will first end the war in Ukraine, and then start a war in Iran. So yeah, and that's I think with Putin, I think the biggest threat is I think the Chinese. I mean they want to conquer the world, and
Hmm.
they are willing to go really far, but they do it in in a Cold War way, and
Right.
I have no problem with the Chinese. They just want world domination. That's what I think. Yeah.
Yeah. But why?
Yeah,
I mean
why
that.
not? Because they
Um.
can. They can. I mean, they have the
Yeah, but
population, they have the technology, and they have the will to do it.
but
Why
they
not?
don't have a good economy, and they keep messing with their. They keep messing with their own money. So
Yeah,
it's hard to take over the money. Like everybody talks about the dollar being strong and the dominant power, the dominant currency. Well, for it to go to the Chinese currency, well, they've got to maintain a consistent currency and, value of currency. And they haven't done that. They've devalued their currency for pricing and, things like that. And that doesn't instill feeling of safety.
no,
Financial safety. I'm talking financial.
I agree. I agree, and it's not attractive to us anyway.
Right.
But I do predict the death of the dollar. Not now, but it will happen. And yeah, we will get our digital dollar.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we are in transition to a new financial system anyway. We're going
Right.
to blockchain money. I mean, our fiat currency will be gone in a few years from now. There will
Mm-hmm.
be no cash anymore. Those days, I mean, we're like these are going to be the last. I mean, 5 6 years, and then cash is gone.
Mm-hmm.
It will be gone. So it's all going to be digital, all our money. I don't know if that's a good thing, but it will happen. Um, I mean, everything that's happening is not. It's social engineering, right?
Right. Well, it's
Um,
it's this huge change. It's
yeah,
like we went from agricultural to industrial. It's the same from industrial to electronic, frankly.
yeah, yeah,
And electronic then energy,
yeah.
you know. So yeah, it's kind of it is a huge world change, you
Absolutely.
know. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
sorry,
Please,
go ahead.
please go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was going to ask you about remote viewing. When this is weird to ask this way, do you teach remote viewing remotely?
I prefer not to, but
Oh, okay.
I've done it. I prefer to have my students right in front of me in a room or in a
Right.
class because I mean it's the better way. I mean I like to look people in the eye, right, when
Hmm.
I teach them. But
Right.
yes, I do it remotely through
You do.
but I
Yeah.
don't prefer to do it, but I can do it. Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
different
absolutely.
energy field when you have
Yeah,
them
yeah,
in a class and when you have them on Zoom or whatever. It's a different energy field. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, anything you'd like to add to our
Yeah, no. So,
conversation?
read my books, The Power of the Heart and Manifestation Perfected. Um, you can check out my website, thepoweroftheheart.com.
Hmm.
And I'm working on some new books, but I can't talk about it right now.
Yeah,
Uh,
okay.
but
Will you come back on when you get your new
yes,
books?
I'd love to,
Good.
to come back on and be the change you want to see in the world.
Hmm.
You have chosen to incarnate in this body to have this experience. Don't fall into the trap of fear because it's an illusion.
Hmm.
And life is great. I mean, you are infinite intelligence. You are unconditional love. You have access to a timeless dimension. And if you die, everything is going to be great. So
Yeah, what's
don't
the
be afraid.
worry?
You are having yeah. So I think this is the problem. We have the personality and the body, and we have traumas, and we start to identify with the body, and the body is just a filter through which the soul can experience things in this dimension, right? The body is a suit, but we are really infinite consciousness looking through the eyes of the body. I mean,
Hmm.
Anita Morjani calls the body a vantage point.
Hmm.
But we are not the vantage point. We are the consciousness that looks through the vantage point.
Right. Well, will you ever be, do you believe, earthlings with bodies, but much more consciousness? In other words, can still touch, but we have not wired our body for fear. Because I think, the fear is in the body. It's not in the soul, it's not in spirit. It's wired into the body, basically to keep us alive, keep us in the body, because otherwise everybody be, I'll do it next time. This got hard. I don't like it. I'm out of here. Without fear, there'd be a lot more suicides, a lot more leaving.
Yeah, but there's still, I mean, right now there is a lot of suicides happening, right? I know.
Yeah, but not as many as there'd be if there was no fear. I think a lot of people are kept here by fear of pain, by fear of, leaving, really.
Yeah, but they're also they have fear of they don't know what's happening if they die, right? I mean,
Right.
that's a big
And
fear
yeah,
too.
exactly. The abyss of what's out there. Yeah.
Yeah, my father passed away last year, and he didn't want to die. He was so fearful of dying.
Mm-hmm. He was
Uh,
Catholic, right?
yeah,
Catholics
yeah,
are afraid of dying.
yeah, and he was like, and he said, if I fall asleep, I'm going. He knew he was going to die if he fell asleep, so he didn't sleep for days, and then
Oh my God.
when he fell asleep, he actually died. So yeah,
Yeah. Once he relaxed,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
spirit left. Yeah.
yeah.
Pretty
He said,
interesting, isn't it?
yeah, he told me, he said, if I fall asleep, I will die, and it's exactly what happened.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So yeah,
My father, again, I was brought up Catholic. So when my father was dying, we do what probably you did was a death watch. We're all there.
yeah,
And I said, "Are you afraid?" And he said, "Anybody who looks into that abyss is afraid." And I thought, you're absolutely right. To look at it from a human point, somebody in the
absolutely,
body. Yeah,
yeah.
I know. So again, what's your email? And where you gave your website before?
Yeah, so my website is thepoweroftheheart.com, and my email address is my first name, Baptist, Baptist, at thepoweroftheheart.com. So
Okay,
that's
great.
where people
Yeah,
can drop me an email.
yeah. Well, I've loved our conversation, and
Yeah,
I
thank you
could
so
go
much. I
on
really
forever
enjoyed
with it. Yeah,
it.
go everywhere. I might have to.
There's so much to talk about, yes, but
There
you
is.
know, in the end, I think we're all just walking each other home, and we're just comparing notes, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
it's what we're really doing. Yeah,
I know it really is. What do you remember? What do you know?
yeah,
I
exactly.
know, I know. Thanks so much for being on, and let's
Thank
be
you
in
so much.
touch certainly for your new books.
Thank you so much, Barb. It was an honor and a privilege to be on your show.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.